Oh man, I got a great show for you today. Coming up, we're counting down the greatest rock songs of the last magical period of the rock era. And I'm telling you, these are all perfect songs, and 90% of them I've never talked about before. There's the story of a frontman who refused to believe that his lover was cheating on him until he caught her in the act, and he wrote a song while he was writhing in the pain of betrayal. And it's become an all-time anthem from a band that I consider to be the greatest of the last 2 or 3 decades. Plus the rock classic that came from a letter that today's band got from a fan who was being bullied for not being punk enough by her classmates. They wrote this song as a response to the bullies, and it became her ultimate revenge. Plus the riff that the legend wrote that he felt was a total snoozer, but it became the ultimate stadium anthem. And the sage around a track by a cocky alternative rock band that some called the saviors of rock, who blatantly stole a riff from a luminary. Famous Luminaries' reaction was perfect. Find out what happened in one of the best countdowns we've ever had, coming up next. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. Make sure to subscribe below right now so you know when our latest stuff comes out. We're going to get right into it. You know, since I stopped doing our yearly countdowns at 1999, mostly because I could not find 10 great songs for the year 2000 and beyond, actually, since then, I got hundreds of requests to focus on the top rock songs from a 3 or 4 year period. So I decided to look at 2000 to 2004. And man, I'm so glad I got those requests because I looked at these songs and there are some truly perfect songs here. Now, my criteria is that they had to either be a top 40 hit on the pop charts or a huge hit on the rock charts. And man, for all the crappy songs that were on the mainstream charts in the early 2000s, the 10 songs I'm about to cover are lights out. Perfect songs. Let's do it. As the current opens on our top 10 rock songs that were released between 2000 and 2004, I've got Bring Me to Life by Evanescence at number 10. You know, when Amy Lee was 19, she was stuck in a controlling, unhappy relationship and hiding all that behind a smile that she didn't really feel. One night while she was out with friends, a casual acquaintance named Josh Hartzler, he sat across from her and he just asked her the question, "Are you really happy?" That question felt like someone could see right through her, and the doors flung open. It sparked the chorus she'd soon write, "Wake Me Up Inside." Even though the song was written about him in 2000, Amy and Josh didn't start dating for years after that pivotal moment. It was a powerful, unintended connection with a guy who was just a friend of a friend at the time, but it seemed as if fate had been calling. And Bring Me to Life was a band collaboration. Amy teamed up with Ben Moody and David Hodges as co-writers. Ben said the track is about discovering something or someone that awakens feelings that you've never realized before, realizing there's a bigger world beyond the safe bubble. There's also the rap counter vocal by Paul McCoy, which the label pushed for, to fit the new metal trend of the early 2000s. Amy wasn't wholly comfortable with that addition at first, feeling it didn't quite align with her artistic vision for it. And while Bring Me to Life was originally meant for the Daredevil soundtrack back in 2003, its colossal success tended to overshadow the movie that helped launch it. The meteoric rise of Bring Me to Life leapfrogged Amy and Evanescence from playing clubs to arenas in just a matter of a month. The song's popularity soared around the world, number 1 in 5 countries, including Australia and the UK. It crowned the alternative and mainstream rock charts in the US and reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. And it introduced us to Amy Lee, my pick for the greatest female rock vocalist of the 2000s. Along with Lizzie Hale from Hellstorm, both incredible vocalists. All right, busting in at number 9 on our countdown of the top 10 rock songs of the early 2000s, I've got Last Night by The Strokes. When you think of The Strokes and their breakthrough era, it's easy to picture a band that felt almost anti-glam, like they were too cool for the spotlight. I mean, that vibe, let's be honest, it showed up a lot in the early 2000s, and a big part of it came across in Last Night. The track became almost a soundtrack for their aloof New York City elite mystique. The quick-witted guitar hooks, Julian Casablancas' cool, laconic vocal delivery. And a brooding sense that fame was something they were observing from a distance rather than really chasing. Many people perceived the band's attitude as arrogance or even rudeness, especially in interviews and on stage. On stage where Casablancas could come off as being a little standoffish, right? Over the years, there have been stories about the band feeling distant during live shows or clashing with others in the studio or on tour. It all feeds into how Last Night sits in the hot period for the Strokes, a sharp, catchy snapshot of a band who seemed to be watching the world from a dare you not to care distance, even as the world watched them in return. Go back to the first time you heard Last Night and how the opening riff sounded somewhat familiar. Well, you were not hallucinating. Julian Casablancas has openly acknowledged that the opening guitar hook was lifted, or really stolen from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It was a total ripoff of American Girl. In fact, his response to it, instead of suing them, is hilarious. He went on to invite the Strokes to open for him on his 2006 tour, turning what could have been a nasty feud into an unexpected amicable collaboration. Julian told producer Gordon Raphael that he wanted the track to feel like a band from the past taking a time trip into the future. Very cool. That intention to, became an interesting blend of lo-fi modern energy with a 70s punk vibe that gave Last Night a nostalgic bite, while still sounding fresh and rebellious in 2001. Last Night climbed to number 14 in the UK, number 5 in the alternative rock chart, and in the States, it went to number 1 on the indie charts as well in the UK. All right, our countdown to the top 10 early 2000s rock songs rolls on with Times Like These by Foo Fighters at number 8. Times Like These is one of my favorite rock tracks of the 21st century because the song captures an emotional human crossroad for Dave Grohl and really the band. It's summed up in a line about an internal struggle that many of us can definitely relate to. I'm a little divided. Do I stay or run away and leave it all behind? It's not just poignant musical poetry here. It's the real-time crisis of whether the band should stay together or just walk away. That tension between commitment and the allure of walking away gives the track its aching, urgent heartbeat. The band drama, it didn't happen in a vacuum, though. The turmoil was intensified by deep personal battles, including drummer Taylor Hawkins' near-fatal overdose in 2001. Of course, sadly, years later that would happen. But the incident then sent the band into a tailspin. It was a fearsome wake-up call that colored everything they were making musically at the time. There are smaller, almost hidden details, too. The line, I'm a new day rising, that isn't merely a hopeful turn of phrase. It's a direct nod to Husker Du's 1985 album New Day Rising, one of Dave's favorite records. It's an acknowledgement that rock's lineage and energy fed into what Dave was trying to do with Foo Fighters, especially during that critical period. He felt empty during the band's hiatus, but he was hungry to reignite that fire. Musically, the track leans into experimentation as well. Carries an unusual feel with a time signature that sits around 7/4, a choice born from wanting to evoke a rush of energy, a rush drum beat thing. That's what they call it. To channel the spirit of the radio, a rush-like groove. That choice gives Times Like These its driving propulsion, making the fear and resolve a muscular flex while being emotionally exhilarating at the same time. You feel me? Times Like These stands as a testament to a band circling the drain, scared of losing itself, yet stubbornly choosing to forge ahead no matter what. It's a story of fear and resolve and of finding a way to get through hardest time as a unit. As the second single from the One by One album, Times Like These rose to number 5 on the alternative rock and mainstream rock chart in 2003. When I saw Foo Fighters live up against the rail, front row, Dave had truly an emotional, slowed down version of the song after Taylor's death. I'm a street light shining. All right, coming in at number 7 on our top 10 rock songs from 2000-2004, it's a track inspired by a suspenseful bit of cinema with one of the most badass riffs of the century so far. I got Take Me Out by Franz Ferdinand. Alex Kapranos, the dynamic frontman of Franz Ferdinand, came up with Take Me Out after a late-night viewing of the 2001 film Enemy at the Gates. Of course, the story about a sniper duel in Stalingrad. A great movie if you haven't seen it. He found the image of two people hidden waiting for the other to blink first to be a perfect metaphor for a song about romantic hesitation. In one line, the song digs into that point in a budding relationship when both people know there's something there, but fear vulnerability too much to make a move. The refrain, Take Me Out, is intentionally murky. It's a request for a date, but it also carries a desperate wish for the tension to just end, even if taking out means something more literal or dramatic, such as life or death, the standoff that was pivotal in the movie he was watching, Enemy at the Gates. The band stumbled onto the track's adrenaline-inducing tempo shifts really by accident. Get this, Nick McCarthy wrote the verse on a toy keyboard. This is while Alex came up with the main guitar riff. Both of them were just messing around to see what would stick. When they tried to fit the keyboard and the guitar sounds together, their mood shifted, and the chorus, which is slow and stomping, ended up feeling right on the money. They planned a more conventional structure there, but keeping the fast verses together and then dropping into that heavy, slowed-down chorus sounded a lot better. It just kind of came together in a hodgepodge. A happy accident that happened when they tied them together. A little improv magic, right? Well, I say, don't you know? You say you don't know. There's a really cool edge to the song's punchy staccato chug. The kind of energy that feels like a spoof of sports rock, nodding a little to the bombastic anthems from the days of Queen or the opening riff of, like Eye of the Tiger. That's what they were going for. Even the producer wasn't sold on it, though, at first. In fact, Tor Johansson thought the track didn't belong on the record at all and kept asking why they were even recording the song. He was convinced other songs were much stronger. In the end, though, the tension that Alex originally wanted to capture in the song was produced brilliantly. Take Me Out was large in Europe, taking the number 2 spot in Scotland, went to number 8 in Ireland and number 3 in the UK. It was also a number 3 alternative track in the US in 2004, and it was number 1 on the indie charts. Grabbing the number 6 spot on our countdown of the top 10 rock songs of the early 2000s, we have a tune that surprised the band when it won 3 Grammy Awards. I got U2 with Beautiful Day. U2's Beautiful Day feels like a defiant spirit of hope. Born out of a rough stretch for the band in 1999, 2 years after their perplexing pop album, it was written as an anthem about resilience. The idea that even when you've lost almost everything, you can still find joy in what remains, find joy in the struggle, and just keep moving forward. It's easy to hear it as a bright, upbeat pop song, but really at its core, it's about choosing happiness or oblige happiness in the face of stubborn, stony ground circumstances. Their words. There's talk of a double meaning behind the track as well, which is very intriguing. Some hear a dialogue like Noah telling God to be grateful for a fresh start after the biblical flood, a metaphor for starting over after disaster. The song's origin was a little bit more modest, though. It began as a version that was called Always, a fairly ordinary rock tune that was transformed into something colossal after Bono added the now iconic chorus over a sharp, shattered metal drum groove that was engineered by the producers. Now, lyrically, Bono is described as about someone who loses nearly everything: partner, home, security, whatever, yet finds a new perspective and a reason to celebrate, to keep going on. A call to cherish dreams and then actually live them. The reason I chose this song is it means a lot to me. So when I was in my 20s, I went through a really tough spell where the company that I worked for closed down one day without notice. I had a really great job. And one morning, out of the blue, we just went to work and we found a note that said the business was bankrupt and it was closed indefinitely. This was no fault of our own. It just happened. It was a really tough time. I was unemployed. I was trying to find a job after buying my first home. I'd only been married a few years. So I'm a spiritual person, and I decided to sacrifice something that was important to me at the time to receive, blessings and increased focus. So I fasted from music for an entire month. And you know how much I love music. I can't survive without it. It was 30 days of hell. Well, on day 30, I got an incredible job offer. And it just so happened to be on the very day that U2 released Beautiful Day. I bought the CD single and I broke my fast. I was on the way home to tell my wife about this job offer. And as I drove home and I played that song, after 30 days without music, I'm telling you, it was complete euphoria. It was the most joyful sing-along moment of my 20s. I felt that music with every fiber of my being. And I know it's because I hadn't listened to music in 30 days. It just was an explosion of soul. And I'll always be grateful to that song for that moment. I'll never forget it. So the song was a number 21 single on the Billboard Hot 100 for U2. And when I recall Bono up there at the pulpit accepting the Grammy Award for Song of the Year in 2000, declaring the moment with that famous line about the song's supposed lack of a hook, I'm reminded how it sweeps you up despite not having a profound chorus. It isn't about a thunderous hook so much as a rising surge. The moment when the clouds part and the sun breaks through, reminding us that we can get through our darkest days and come out triumphant. It's a beautiful day. Don't let it get away. All right, carrying on with our countdown of the top 10 rock songs of the early 2000s, it's a track that was never intended to be a classic that shaped a generation of music fans. Talking about All the Small Things by Blink-182 at number 5. All the Small Things came together as a simple, catchy pop-punk tune that Tom DeLonge created because of his love for the Ramones, actually. It was inspired by his then-girlfriend Jennifer Jenkins, who would later become his wife. Jennifer complained to Tom that he was always writing songs about other girls and not anything about her. So he decided to change that with what evolved to All the Small Things. Tom began trying to write lyrics about things Jennifer had done, such as leaving roses for him at the bottom of the stairs so he would find them after a long recording session at the studio. She left me roses by the stairs. In fact, Tom said everything in the song is absolutely true. Now, Jennifer was excited that the song was about her, but Tom told her he didn't think that the song was turning out to be very good at all. And because of Tom's lack of confidence, All the Small Things was one of the last tracks finished for Enema of the State. Tom and his two bandmates, Mark and Travis, worshiped the Ramones, like I said, and that na-na-na hook and All the Small Things, that's a deliberate nod to the legendary band from Forest Hills, New York. Of course, they composed punky tunes with very catchy hooks and simple melodies, which is what this song was. Blink wrote a lot of tongue-in-cheek songs around that period, but All the Small Things was different. It was a straight-ahead love song that the band referred to as corny, yet their fans, like me, loved it. The video for the song is a parody of boy bands like the Backstreet Boys, and man, hilarious. One of the best videos of the time. Now that Tom DeLonge is in his 50s, though, he actually cringes when he hears All the Small Things on the radio. And he once told an interviewer that he had to turn off the radio whenever it comes on because it just haunts him. Tom said he sounds like he's 11 years old when he hears the vocal from the turn of the century. Tom may have thought the song was subpar for Blink, but man, fans thought otherwise. All the Small Things was a number 6 single on the Billboard Hot 100, went to number 1 on the alternative rock chart, and number 1 in the UK, where it sold over 1.8 million copies. It was the highest charting hit for the band from Poway, California. All right, coming in at number 4, I've got a true modern classic, Drive by Incubus. I don't know anybody that doesn't love this song. For my ears, Drive has a haunting complexity. It's far from being just a catchy song. When I listen to Drive, the song makes me feel like I'm surrounded by a group of strangers, and fear keeps tugging at my sleeve. It's kind of intimidating. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm going to try to explain it, though. I'm going to get a little deep here. I mean, the song sounds easy, with a warm guitar lick by Mike Einziger and Brandon Boyd's calm lead vocal. But if you lean in a little closer, you'll hear a more intimate story. One about grabbing the wheel when anxiety wants to drive you to a place that you've never been. The story of Drive unfolds with a moment of reckoning. It's not that the world suddenly loosens its grip. It's that the grip becomes undeniable. Brown and Boyd explained that the lyrics are about realizing how much of life is lived because of fear, and imagining what life could be like if you took control of the steering wheel yourself. In the verses, kind of watching a person notice the default setting of their days, the autopilot that kicks in when worry moves into the driver's seat, and then almost in a whisper choosing to intervene. It's a personal vow made in a room that smells like coffee and late night rehearsals where the weight of expectations, both professional and personal, presses in. But the narrator decides to push back, to ask for a map and a seatbelt and a little more courage. Now, the water over line lyric, that sparked countless conversations. The chorus and the main refrain sit like a hinge. Would you choose water over wine and hold the wheel and drive? Choose water over wine and hold my own and drive. It's one of those lines that can mean two things at once, really, depending on where you stand. For some, it's a metaphor for choosing truth and clarity. The water over intoxicating illusions or passive comfort, the wine. For others, it's a more practical call to pick the hard path that leads to real independence, even if the easy taste of wine would be sweeter in the moment. Either way, the line invites you to picture a scene where the narrator doesn't settle for the path of least resistance. Where choosing water is choosing honesty, and a life that can be steered by the individual, by you. Drive isn't a ground, loud anthem dressed in bravado, though. It's almost basic in its want for peace and clarity amid the late 90s to early 2000s sonic whirlpool, an industry that could turn urgency into a furious energy that would not calm down. The track's simplicity, it's intentional, a deliberate contrast to the era's high-energy, sometimes dark nu metal landscape that was there. It's as if Incubus wanted to remind listeners that strength can sound gentle. The leadership can be a quiet decision rather than a thunderclap. That a steady hand can change everything, even when the world feels like a storm you can't outrun. The song's understated arrangement becomes the perfect vehicle for a moment of inner reconciliation. The act of choosing to drive, even if the road ahead is uncharted territory. Drive's ascent for Incubus was a bit of a surprise. The Make Yourself album carried heavier, more nu metal textures, and Drive didn't scream for attention in the way some of the other songs would. It took its time moving across radio until it found its biggest audience crossing over into pop radio, traveling to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 after striking number 1 on the alternative rock chart in 2001. All right, we're up to number 3, or down to number 3, depending on how you look at the countdown. This is your list of the top 10 rock songs from the early 2000s, and landing at number 3, I've got The Middle by Jimmy Eat World. What's wild about Jimmy Eat World's signature track, The Middle, is that it started as a self-financed Hail Mary kind of anthem. The band had just been dropped by Capitol after the Clarity album didn't sell like they'd hoped, and yet they poured their energy into this simple, positive message. The Middle was really meant to be a little voice to themselves. A kick in the butt to motivate them to keep going even when they felt like nobody cared about their music. Try your best. Everything you can. The song's actually a reply to a fan letter that was written as a pep talk to a teenage girl in Arizona who was being bullied for not being punk enough. She wrote to Jim Adkins explaining that she felt like a social outcast because she wasn't punk enough for her school's cliques. Adkins was struck by the irony of a subculture built on individuality having its own exclusionary rules. He wrote the lyrics just for her, turning a private letter about high school social politics into a global anthem for anyone who felt like they didn't fit into a specific scene, and it was a great revenge. Surprisingly, it all happened in one sitting, though. It's a perfect pop rock hook, but the band didn't even hear it as a guaranteed hit at first. Because they didn't have a label at the time, they had to fund the Bleed American album themselves, which pushed them to strip things down, keep things really frugal instead of chasing their older, more experimental material. Now, the music video for The Middle cleverly brought out the meaning of the song and created an image that went back to that original fan email. The video shows a fully clothed kid at a party where everyone else is in their underwear. It flips the usual dream of being, out in public without clothes, to a dream signaling that it's okay to stand out and be comfortable with who you are. Ultimately, Jimmy Eat World, the 4-piece from Mesa, Arizona, wanted us to trust them when they sang everything will be all right. And in Jimmy, we definitely trusted. The Middle took the #1 position on the alternative rock chart, went to #5 on the Billboard Hot 100, and #2 in Canada, where it was the most played radio song of 2002. Back to the countdown. We have a song that, like Beautiful Day, did not have a strong vocal hook. In fact, it didn't have a chorus at all. I'm talking about Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes at #2. Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes breaks traditional structure by not having a distinct chorus, relying instead on the repetition and growing intensity of the main riff, which has become one of the most well-known of the rock era, let's be clear. Jack White originally treated the Seven Nation Army riff as a break glass in case of emergency asset. Let me explain. He was convinced it was the perfect melody for a James Bond theme song, and he intended to save it in his vault in case he ever got a call from the 007 producers. He only released it after giving up on ever becoming a Bond composer. Ironically, he was eventually asked to write a Bond theme, Another Way to Die, 5 years later.
It's just another way to die.
Now, Seven Nation Army, released in 2003, has that feeling of improvisational magic, improv magic. The famous bass-like riff wasn't actually a bass part at all. The guitar line was played on a semi-acoustic guitar through a pitch-switching pedal, Digitech whammy, I believe. It dropped the pitch an octave to mimic a bass. So Jack White came up with this during a sound check in Australia, and he said the track started as something that he considered a total snoozer. And this is pretty fun. The song took its title from a mispronunciation, not a bold artistic declaration. As he was a young dude, Jack White used to say Seven Nation Army instead of Salvation Army. So he used that playful metathesis as the placeholder for the track, then he just decided to keep it. I love it. Now, lyrically, Seven Nation Army is about the anxious sting of fame and the way gossip can feel like a trap, kind of a paranoia check when you're worried about people talking behind your back. You know, who really said something and what did they really mean by what they said? The line, "I'm going to Wichita," that functions as a metaphor for escaping the pressure cooker of public life, getting away from the entertainment hubs like LA and New York City or Chicago, and exiling to the safety of the heartland, according to Jack.
I'm going to Wichita.
The famous 7-note passage from Seven Nation Army works as both a verse and a chorus, and it's arguably one of the most recognizable guitar riffs in popular music history. And some will say, what about I Can't Get No Satisfaction or Back in Black? I'm just saying that it certainly deserves to be amongst the top, especially the last 30 years. Now, the chanting melody of Seven Nation Army exploded into a global phenomenon after being adopted by Belgian soccer fans in 2003. During the 2006 World Cup, before sweeping into American sports, where it's become a diamond. Given that the White Stripes were an American band from the Motor City of Detroit, it seemed likely they would break big domestically as a stadium anthem first, and before reaching a broader international audience, but that's not how it worked. In 2003, Seven Nation Army captivated the world, marching to #3 in Switzerland and Italy, #4 in Germany, and #7 in the UK. Although it was a #1 track and alternative, get this, the song died at #76 on the Billboard Hot 100. But of course, it's had billions of plays since then. It's got to be the biggest #76 hit ever. All right, before we unveil the song that reigns supreme on our countdown, I do want to give an honorable mention to It's Been a While, a powerful, emotive, autobiographical track by Stain. Everybody loves the song, you can't deny it. It's Been a While as a diary-style look at addiction. It's about the time that's passed since Aaron Lewis was sober, or could stand on his own and handle a steady relationship. It's not just a breakup song, though. It's an acknowledgement of the past. Aaron Lewis put it that way, saying that the track digs into the guilt of how things in his life got so messed up, not just the end of the relationship. The low point was when Aaron actually contemplated taking his own life, actually putting a loaded, you know what, I can't say it on here, in his mouth. It's Been a While was an important song that has resonated with millions, rising to #1 in the alternative mainstream rock charts and the UK rock and metal chart. On the Billboard Hot 100, it went to number 6 in 2001. All right, we've come to the revelation of the song we've chosen. It's the best rock song released from 2000 to 2004. It's a song that prompted the quote, "Who would have thought betrayal could sound so good?" from the man who wrote it. It's come from a band that I truly feel is the greatest rock band of the last 25 years. And number 1 on our countdown, I got Mr. Brightside by The Killers. So the Killers frontman Brandon Flowers woke up with a jolt of a gut feeling that wouldn't quit. He hopped in his ride, he knocked back a shot of nerves, and he barreled toward a Las Vegas pub called the Crown and Anchor. This is where he caught his girlfriend with another man. And in that chaos, a firestorm of words began to spill out that would inspire generations. When he caught his girlfriend cheating, he had a sick feeling. As he stood in the bar, he didn't walk up to the table, though. He stalked the room from the shadows, and before confronting them, he retreated to the bathroom to compose himself. The choking on your alibi line, that was inspired by the confrontation that followed. Brandon was in denial. He refused to believe that his girlfriend would cheat on him until he saw it with his own eyes. The result was a creation of Mr. Brightside, the song that has become really the Don't Stop Believin' or the Stairway to Heaven for Gen Y. A song born in the heat of passion. A chorus that hit so hard, it didn't even need a second verse. Because Brandon Flowers wrote it in a frenzy, or a rush of panic and honesty, instead of finishing a full song with multiple verses, he just repeated that fierce opening verse for Mr. Brightside, and it was amazingly effective. I mean, what could have been a lazy shortcut became a bold, instant hook. One of the most recognizable lyric shapes in rock history, let's be clear. Forged from pure human pressure. Back in the late 90s, Brandon was obsessed with Hunky Dory and tried to nail the desperate delivery of Bowie's Queen Bitch. And the raw monotone edge of Iggy Pop 16, as according to the BBC. And then there was the Strokes moment that shaped everything. The Killers scrapped almost all of their early work after hearing Is This It? And they realized it made their earlier stuff sound dated. But they wrote an even better song. Mr. Brightside was the only track that survived that purge. And the song, it wasn't born in a fancy studio. It was actually written when Flowers was about 19, scribbled on paper in his sister's house, because he hadn't even started writing lyrics on a cell phone yet. Mr. Brightside was the first one Brandon Flowers and Dave Kuning wrote after they formed the Killers in 2001. They gave it its debut at an acoustic open mic night at Cafe Espresso Roma, a coffee shop in Las Vegas, in January 2002. After adding bass player Mark Stormer and drummer Ronnie Vanucci Jr., they polished the track and caught a deal with the British indie label Lizard King. The label pressed 500 copies on CD, which were released in the UK in September of 2003. So all the emotions that Brandon Flowers expressed in Mr. Brightside were completely real. I believe that's what made it such an incredible track, or why it is an incredible track that will live forever. When Brandon was writing the lyrics, the pain of betrayal, it was still fresh. As he put it, he was Mr. Brightside. It was the re-release, though, of Mr. Brightside in the spring of 2004 that catapulted the song about paranoia and jealousy to greatness. It was the number 1 track on the UK indie chart, number 3 at alternative rock, and number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, recognized as the biggest hit for the Killers. And a song that, like I said, will live forever. I think it's the best, well, besides the Foo Fighters, I would say Foo Fighters, Everlong, and Mr. Brightside. And honestly, the Killers have so many great songs. Like I said, best band of the last 25 years, in my opinion. Foo Fighters right there with them. Of course, Foo Fighters released a lot of their stuff before the Killers hit the scene. So I would go Foo Fighters, Killers. Anyway, let's have a great discussion below. Did you like this countdown? Should we count down some of these rock songs from the 2000s I mean, may as well pick the perfect songs out there. Let's tell me your memories of these songs. Open your mind to them if you haven't. They're great songs. Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, records and the truth, my friends.